Welcome back for part 3 on building your business with partnerships. Let's get back to it.
Okay.
I want to talk about non-competes. What protections are reasonable and recommended, and what's asking too much? I once worked for a company. Their non-compete was so ironclad. I have not seen in years and years and years since my time and onwards that any employee worked in the industry again.
So listen, that's a stupid, there's just no other way to say it. And the reason why it's stupid is because what a court, and I'm not a lawyer here, but what a court will say when there's something that's unreasonable like that is they'll throw the whole thing away. And they'll say, no, you can do anything anywhere. Okay, a non-compete, that's a good one. And I could also talk about non-solicitation as well. A non-compete is something that is reasonable to protect the integrity of the organization, but not restrictive on the employee that they can't work somewhere else. Okay, that they're prevented from using their inbuilt skills. And the jurisdiction is different in, sorry, the legal precedents are different in different jurisdictions, different states or provinces, and it's also different and it changes over time, right? And so what I would say there is that you definitely want to get legal counsel. Do not ever take a template with respect to non-competes. And I'll also say that, of course you want to protect yourself, but you have to realize it's a very, very small world. And if you do something that's just so onerous that you're going to restrict an employer, restrict a potential partner from ever entering into it because it's just so you know um, tight. It's very tough. Non-solicitations, on the other hand, those are interesting. So two organizations make a partnership of whatever kind, right? And it's going swimmingly well. And then one organization, because they got a chance to get to know the employees of the other organization very well, says, you know what? Come work over here. We think it's better that if you work over here. Well, listen, that's not fair. That's not nice. And for that reason, most organizations will have a non-solicit clause that's pretty strong, okay, in it. And so, there's usually something that in the employment contracts that also say, hey, you can't solicit outwards, etc. So there's two protections. The interesting thing is that sometimes they'll say, well, if you do solicit, you have to pay for 2 years of salary of that person, plus any of their bonuses or commissions, etc., to us in liquidated damages. So it's not saying you can't do it, but it's putting a price tag on it that's very, very clear, right? And so when it comes to the actual um, um, partnership agreement between the two organizations, this is something that there needs to be a frank discussion about. Non-competition is another one. Let's just say, for example, and we used the example of that website company, okay, one of which is designing and one of which is developing, and one of them decides, okay, well, you know what? The design company says, why do we want to send all this development work, the software work to this other company? We're going to start hiring in a whole bunch of developers of our own. Okay, and if there's a non-compete, okay, depending on how it's worded, it might preclude them from actually doing so. And in fact, the reason why they're precluded from encroaching on the other one might be the reason why the partnership has worked so well to date, right? And as soon as they start competing against each other, it's not it's not it's not cooperation. It's competition, and it's not, we're attacking the market as one force, right? This is our partner. This is what they do. This is what we do, right? Well, we can do that too, but don't worry about them, but we've got the people. This is very difficult, right? So that's why there's non-compete clauses often in partnership agreements as well. Now, like I said, the entire value chain, okay, what the purpose of that partnership is, will determine very much whether, in fact, there is there's a need for stringent or more lenient clauses, whether it be non-compete, non-solicit, or any of the others. So
Talk to me, Randall, about that equal 50-50 partnership and when you would or wouldn't agree to that kind of terms. There's lots and lots of people out there saying I would never do it again. I was burned before. It's too complicated.
Okay, so let's sort of separate um, partnerships into two ways. We're using that word in so many different ways. I want to just disambiguate for a moment. If you're talking, for example, of a professional service firms where there's a bunch of partners, okay, and they're all 50-50 partners. There's 10 partners. They merge in with another firm that's 10 partners, and now it's 20 partners. Everybody's got an equal share of all decisions and everything. There needs to be a mechanism to deal with disputes. There needs to be rules, the ground rules and everything. And I think a lot of problems happen when none of those ground rules or none of the cultural dimension of how the organization operates. I mean, that's kind of when that's not defined and it's not sort of defined beyond 30,000 feet, we got to land that airplane a little bit more. That's kind of where retreats would come in, and that gets people kind of on the same thing. And when you've got, say, that two-partner organization and it's 50-50 and there's no shotgun agreement and there's no dispute resolution mechanisms and there isn't ongoing conversations about the partnership itself, it's bound to have some sort of problems. And Rania, you and I, with some of our clients, we've certainly seen that where sadly it's meant sometimes the dissolution of partnerships. It's very tough on everybody, really. With respect to sort of organizational partnerships, okay, you're right that some of those partnerships are the big mothership and all kinds of little partners that sort of taking advantage of what the big mothership can provide. Okay, and then there's the partnerships. And by the way, in those cases, usually the terms of the partnerships are set by that big mothership, right? Because everybody wants a piece of that mothership, right? And their partners know they need to qualify and they need to invest in professional development and they need to do this and that, whatever, right? And that's the way they can become a partner, if you will. On the other hand, when there's organizations that are a bit closer in size or where it's not the big channel program partnership kind of structure or affiliates, etc. Okay, but where each of them brings something different to the table. In that particular case, it's a question of how do we resolve disputes, right? When there's issues of unfairness, or when there's things that come up that nobody really had a thought that it would ever come up. How do we have those conversations? What I'd say there is that if there's two levels of conversation, one at the executive level, okay, and then two at the operational level, if we're able to know that there's two mechanisms to sort of resolve things and to monitor things and to invest, if you will, in the partnership per se, um, you know, I think we could learn something sometimes from the tech industry. Salesforce, for example, every year they've got their Dreamforce, okay, conference. They bring in, professional speakers. Okay, I've not spoken there, but speakers like me, okay, to hype everybody up. They've got all kinds of breakout groups where they have their partners in, where they're doing education, right? How much are you as an organization investing and actually making sure your partnership actually works? What are you doing to train all the people on the other side? What are you doing to make sure all of your people are aligned throughout your organization, right? How does it fit with your strategy? Why is it strategic? Is it strategic on the other side? If it's tactical, okay, how do we know it's working? What are the metrics? So all of these kinds of things can sort of address the issue of how do we make sure that it sticks together and actually achieves the results. Always worries me when I'm going on and everything,
Doing great. I love it.
so did that answer the question?
You're doing great. Shirley, and nice to see you. Can an employer do a non-compete without first making that document clear first, but do it in another way that's equivalent?
Okay, so not being a lawyer, that's the caveat. What I'll say is this. You have when you have an employee, okay, they've got to sign some sort of employment agreement. Sometimes it's an explicit contract, sometimes it's the acceptance of a letter, etc. And the terms of that agreement need to be clear when the signature is actually received, right? And that's pretty clear. The larger organizations will have HR policies. And it'll say in the offer letter or the contract, it'll say that you agree as an employee to follow all corporate policies, which may change from time to time. Please ask for a copy of our policies, in which case the employee can do so, and they'll understand what the deal is. My understanding of the court's views of imposing terms after without an explicit and acceptance and signature and so on, it's a dim view. So I think it's harder to do that after the fact. No, it's not impossible. You can say, listen, our business has changed. When I sold one of my businesses, every employee, including myself, we had to sign new employment contracts. Not a problem. Okay, all of a sudden the compensation scheme in terms of bonus or commission, whatever, for everybody that changed, right? It was a public company, so there was options involved, right? But guess what? As a result of that, we also had to accept the various HR policies, including non-competes, right? And non-solicitations and a few other things. So whether an employer can they do it? They can do it, okay, but it's up to you to sort of stick up your hand. If this kind of thing has ever happened to you, I'd say this is the kind of thing where you probably want to get legal advice, right? Because it may be something the employer is hoping to do for a good reason, and it's in everyone's interest to do so and everything. It may be, on the other hand, that your fundamental terms of employment have changed, right? This is a bit further away from the whole partnership conversation bit. But I think it's an important one. The second part of the question, is it possible to do this in another way? If you've agreed to follow the HR policies and the HR policies change, that's one way that an employer can do it, right? But if ever you decide to leave and you get legal advice that says, hey, that wasn't sufficient, okay, them changing their policies unilaterally, even though you agreed to that, you'd have to speak to a lawyer about that. But I've seen that kind of thing happen from time to time too. I'll say one other thing, which is this: people don't quit their jobs, don't quit the company, they quit their boss, right? And you want to make sure as a manager, as a leader, you're investing in yourself to make sure that that doesn't happen. Okay. I think too often people don't invest in themselves. Okay. The retreats are a waste of time. The training is not customized. Okay. The trainer is now YouTube and TikTok, right? As opposed to something that's absolutely relevant in everything. And I think also as an employee, it's up to you to say, okay, how am I bettering myself? Right? You're not sitting there waiting to be fed. I mean, you should take some initiative as well. And what are the courses that you can take that might be of interest? I know at the BrainTrust Professional Institute, we've got a whole bunch of online self-paced courses that people can sign up to themselves or get their team on the same page. From a partnership perspective and everything, the question is, how much are you investing in the other side, right? What kind of skin are you putting in the game to show that you're actually serious about making the partnership work, right? And if we talk, when we started this conversation, what does success look like? The success, I can guarantee you, does not look like we're going to sign an agreement and then we're going to sit back and do nothing. Because if you do that, nothing's going to happen. And I don't think I'm saying anything that most people don't intimately understand, but I think that sadly is what happens. The great partnerships with amazing potential just never yield the results that people expect. Can I just add one other thing? When it comes to partnerships, there's no shortage of people that sort of knock on our door and say, we really want to be partners with the BrainTrust Professional Institute, blah, 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 blah. We can do this and you can do this. And my answer to most of those people sounds like a great idea. Okay. But what if we bring you a deal or you bring us a deal? Let's just see how that goes. Okay. And after that, Leona, crickets. Okay. Why? Because it really wasn't a partnership they were looking at. They didn't see 1 + 1 = 3. They thought that we would be a great source of business for them, period. Right.
Yeah.
But they have no interest whatsoever. And I think that to my point of, to your point of, yes, being intentional about it, right, is one thing, but also recognizing that you got to give before you get. One of the reasons
Mhm.
why we do these leadership Q&A sessions is to give, let people sort of understand how Ronnie and I think, right? And we're not, there's no big offer. There's no PowerPoint slides all over with sign up for this and sign up for that. It's really more, hey, listen, if you're not willing to put skin in the game as part of a potential partnership anywhere, I guess that's kind of the way you view partnerships, no skin in the game, right? And I think that's a real miss, at least from our perspective.
I'm going to now put Randall in the hot seat. Okay, Randall?
Okay.
If we could take everybody here back into behind the curtain to the Brain Trust workshop, I want to ask you, this of all the go-to ideas that your mind goes to, partnerships is really at the top of the list. You have on your website, randallcraig.com, 750 plus tip sheets. If you look up the word partnership, you get 60 pages. This is very near and dear to you, and obviously it's very connected to growing business. But I wanted to hear from you, like, other than the practicalities and opportunities, do you have any idea of like why this speaks to you so much? Like, do you think you're filling a gap? Like, do you think your clients maybe don't see the opportunities that as much as you would like them to, or there's a knowledge gap there?
I think interesting. I never did a search on the website to see how many articles we put up there on partnerships and everything. This is what I think.
I have my theory. I'm going to tell you after.
Okay. I think, and I feel so strongly about this. We might be clever people. Me personally, I might have learned from like these 100+ other organizations and leaders and everything. But I think that what makes good into great is recognizing that there's an awful lot more that you can do when you work with other folks, other organizations that bring different skills, different perspectives, different functional knowledge, different generations, you name it. And I think that that when we take advantage of all that's out there, it means we don't have to invest in everything all being in our own shop, right? It gives us the ability to be flexible, right? And yet at the same time, be best of class at what we do. You know, if somebody's and I sort of joke, what do we know about oil and gas business or mining, right? So the people that we work with are
Yet.
not
What do we
mining.
know yet?
Yeah, okay, yeah. But we focus on service and knowledge-based organizations, right? We know an awful lot about that, right? So the idea of saying the role of partnerships, meaning however defined, it means that 1 + 1 will always equal 3 from our perspective. And I don't know if everybody really gets to it. In one of my books, Personal Balance Sheet, it's my one bestseller, a real bestseller, not an Amazon bestseller. I coined the term give to get. If we give more, we typically will get more. Why? Because putting the skin in the game gives people a chance to, well, taste the chocolate. It gives them a chance to taste the chocolate before they buy the box. They get a sense of what a partnership might actually look like, right? Before they've actually made a commitment, or even before you've discussed it, right? And so I think all of these things sort of play a part into it. But you did put me on the hot seat for that one, Rania. I'm curious your perspective now.
Okay, I'm not qualified to do any sort of assessment on Randall or anybody else, but I can tell you I thought a lot about it because we pick these topics. We only get 12 a year if we do once a month. And largely the topics are driven by what themes we see with our clients, but sometimes Randall's like, no, I really want to do this one. So this one is important to Randall. So if I think about your nature or the nature of any given leader of the organization and also their values, in terms of your nature, I would say you are extroverted and tremendously collaborative in nature. And I'm thinking about those leaders who maybe are more introverted and maybe like they're not thinking out as much as you. And for you, Randall, you have a level of humility unseen. It looks like I'm kissing up my boss, right? But you don't really you're not trying to push your agenda on others. You're very happy to defer, but you find the collaborative process very rewarding in a way that I don't typically see with leaders. And in terms of your values, one of your core values is trust. And we went through the past hour so much about legalese and cover yourself and what if they don't follow through and talk to a lawyer. And if you have a good trusted relationship with people where there's lots of goodwill, you don't have to spend your time. No one goes into partnerships to defend their turf and litigate, you know? So I
Yep.
think that because you know how to build trusted relationships, you don't have to worry about as much as we do worry about it. There's so much goodwill in your relationships. That's my assessment.
Oh, I think that's actually very cool. Can I just like bottle that up and say that to other people? No.
Anybody here wants a personality reading for me about your partnership score? This is a service I am now offering.
It's but you know it's kind of funny. They say that when you sign a contract, you sign the contract and you put it in a drawer and forget about it and get on with life. And if I don't want to leave everyone and all of our viewers and listeners the impression that the focus has got to be on the legalese and the what ifs and protection, etc. The focus of the partnership has got to be the mutual growth. We could make the pie bigger for everybody, right? But we do need to talk about some of these risk mitigation issues, right? And that way we can, you know, be on the same page and put that contract into the drawer and not to look at it again, right? So Rania, thanks for the kind words. I think that's very, very
I
insightful.
didn't mean them to be kind words, but we do have lots of clients who do not have the lists of, they're not thinking about partnerships. And sometimes I'm wondering, how is it that Randall's got his finger on the pulse there so much and other people who are so capable don't? So this is sort of my assessment, and maybe to get people thinking about how to stretch themselves more to find the right fit partners for them.
So let me just sort of just add one more thing to what you said, Rania, which is um, certainly in my work coaching with leaders, you know, most leaders don't need somebody to help with accountability, and they don't need yet another personality test, etc. The issue is they don't know what they don't know, right? And so a lot of my work, you know, I can't be directive. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. You've got to be able to ask some wonderful open-ended questions and propose ideas that they might not have thought of, so they can sort of think through all of the different ideas, because they'll know their business a million times better than I ever will, right? And so maybe that's where that humility comes from, and the fact that you've got to push a coaching client to consider ideas in ways that make the case that in fact they may be a good idea without being directive and saying this is the idea that you need to do, because in fact that might not be the idea. Okay, but every leader that I've ever worked with, of all my clients over the years, most leaders, if they know the right questions, they can figure out the answers themselves. But sometimes they don't know that question, right? So if you're able to ask that one turning point question, they can say, okay, that would mean if this is what I need to do, this is what we need to change in order to address that particular issue, right? And yeah, I getting back to the whole question of partnerships as a whole, I don't think ego is a helpful part of making a great partnership. Okay, I think humility and not focusing on, gee, how can we sort of get the best out of this partnership? How can we screw our partner to sort of get that last little bit if we're negotiating terms of one way or the other? Unless you're leaving money on the table and flexibility on the table, so there's some flex and so that everybody thinks that truly this is a good deal. I think that it's very challenging to keep a partnership done otherwise, fully intact and actually humming, right? So I really do think that humility, no, there's got to be a little bit of ego, okay, from a leader saying, I think that the strategy going forward is to do such and such, right? But when it comes to saying, okay, how do we actually get that partnership, actually identifying the potential partners, having the conversations, doing the due diligence, making sure that there really is alignment on values and from a practical perspective, you're not trying to put round, something round into a square box, if you will. I think humility helps, right? And openness to other ways of doing things. So great question.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, Randall, for the conversation, for our audience who shows up to learn. And if any of the issues we talked about resonate with you, if you're considering a change in your organization and want our perspective, if you're planning leadership retreat, if you're curious about coaching or want to better align your team, do reach out. Happy to have a conversation, share resources. And if you want to get invites to these monthly events, do reach out, info@randallcraig.com, or connect with us on LinkedIn. And we will see you next time.